Hare Krishna everyone, welcome to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Before we start our Srimad Bhagavatam class, let us do a simple Mangala Charana. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaim Narotamam Deving Saraswating Vyasam Tato Jayamudi Rayat Nasaparesha Avadareshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistikihi Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnana Salakaya Chakshunamritanyana Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnumbadaya Krishna Prestaya Putale Srimate Japataka Swami Iti Namane Nama Acharyapadaya Nitai Kripapadayane Gaurakadadam Dainirgram Tharne Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome everyone to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, chapter entitled The Questions by the Sages, text number 1. So this text number 1 has been described as the definition of the absolute truth. So let's see what this text is all about. O my Lord Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of creation, sustenance and destruction of this manifested universe. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestation, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge onto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representation of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universe temporarily manifest by the reaction of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krsna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. So here in the translation, so clearly he says here that the absolute truth, Param Satyam, is a person. And it starts with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I offer my respectful obeisances to that Vasudeva, who is the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. So the absolute truth is a person. Please understand, it's a person, not an impersonal. He is not Jodi, he is not impersonal. That's number one, that's the first point. And absolute truth is the source of all the material and spiritual world. Not only that, he also sustains, maintains and also destroys the material manifestation. This Sri Krishna, he is the cause of all causes, and he knows everything directly and indirectly. What this means is that he is the cause of everything that is manifested that we see around us in this material world. At the same time, he is not directly involved because he works through his energies, like the Devas. The Devas are his hands and legs. In Bahasa Malaysia, they call kaki tangan kerajaan. So the Devas are the kaki tangan kerajaan of Sri Krishna. And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. So in this material world, we see that every person is dependent on someone else. Nobody is totally independent. But in this case, Sri Krishna, he is totally independent. Beyond him, there is no other controller. So that is the unique quality that can only be found in the absolute truth, Param Satyam. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge onto the heart of Brahmaji, So in this material world, knowledge is very, very much valued. So the very first knowledge of creation was given by Sri Krishna through the heart of Brahmaji. Brahmaji, when he was born, he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to turn left or turn right. There was nothing in this material world. Only through the knowledge that comes from Sri Krishna, that manifests in the heart of Brahmaji, then only Brahmaji knew what to do, and he had the blessings of Sri Krishna through that knowledge to acquire the required energy, the Sakti, the intelligence to create all living entities in this material world, including us human beings. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. So the illusory potency is one of the energies of Sri Krishna. So one might ask, why is it Krishna wants us to be in illusion? But the answer is here that actually Krishna doesn't want us to be in illusion. The very purpose of the creation of this material world is so that we living entities get to fulfill our unholy desires. So to fulfill our own unholy desires, we have to be able to forget our original constitutional position as being an eternal servant of Krishna. Only then we can do what we need to do in this material world to perform all kinds of sinful activities or pious activities to so-called enjoy this material world. Only when we forget, then we can do all the wrong things. When we know what is right, what is wrong, we will never do the wrong things. We will never do sinful activities. So therefore the illusory energy is there actually because we want to forget. Not that Krishna wants us to forget. Krishna is giving us the facility so that we can forget. So this illusory energy is so powerful that sometimes in this material world, we see water seen in fire, or sometimes we see land seen on water. This is the power of the illusory energy of Sri Krishna. Only because of him do the material universe temporarily manifest by the reaction of the three modes of material nature appear factual, although they are unreal. So here Krishna is explaining here that Sukadev actually is explaining here that this material world is actually unreal. Unreal in what sense? It's unreal because it is not eternal. Everything in this material world is temporary. It appears at some point and it disappears at a future date. Nothing is permanent. So this is real and unreal according to the constitutional nature of the jiva, the living entity. The living entity is eternal, forever eternal, full of knowledge and always blissful. But this material world is the total opposite of the nature of this the living entity, which is this material world is temporary, it is full of ignorance and is always miserable. Total opposite. So therefore what we see around us is actually unreal. Unreal meaning it's temporary. So therefore Sri Krishna should be meditated upon, it externally existing in the eternal abode, forever free from the illusory representation of this material world. So if we want to escape from this repetition of birth and death in this material world, we should meditate upon this Sri Krishna, Vasudeva, who is actually in the Vaikuntha planets, where there is no birth, no death, no influence of material world. So the purport is actually very, very important. It's lengthy, but it's also very important to understand what Prabhupada wants us to know from this very important verse. Okay, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Purport: obeisances onto the personality of Godhead Vasudeva directly indicate Lord Sri Krishna, who is the divine son of Vasudeva and Devaki. This fact will be more explicitly explained in the text of this work. Sri Vyasadeva asserts herein that Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, and all other are his direct or indirect plenary portions or portion of the portions. Srila Jiva Goswami has even more explicitly explained the subject matter in his Krishna Sandarbha. And Brahma, the original living being, has explained the subject of Sri Krishna substantially in his treatise named Brahma Samhita. In the Samaveda Upanishad, it is also stated that Lord Sri Krishna is the divine son of Devaki. Therefore, in this prayer, the first proposition holds that Lord Sri Krishna is the primeval Lord, and if any transcendental normal culture is to be understood as belonging to the absolute personality of Godhead, it must be name indicated by the word Krishna, which means the all-attractive. In Bhagavad Gita, in many places, the Lord asserts himself to be the original personality of Godhead, and this is confirmed by Arjuna and also by great sages like Narada, Vyasa and many others. In Padma Purana, it is also stated that out of the innumerable names of the Lord, the name of Krishna is the principal one. Vasudeva indicates the plenary portion of the personality of Godhead, and all the different forms of the Lord being identical with Vasudeva are indicated in this text. The name Vasudeva particularly indicates the divine son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Sri Krishna is always meditated upon by the Paramahamsas, who are the perfected ones among those in the renounced order of life. Vasudeva, or Lord Sri Krishna, is the cause of all causes. Everything that exists emanates from the Lord. How this is so is explained in later chapters of this work. This work is described by Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya as the spotless Purana because it contains the transcendental narration of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. The history of Srimad Bhagavatam is also very glorious. It was compiled by Sri Vyasadeva after he had attained maturity in transcendental knowledge. He wrote this under the instruction of Sri Naradaji, his spiritual master. Vyasadeva compiled all Vedic literatures containing the 4 divisions of Vedas and the Vedanta Sutras, or Brahma Sutra, the Puranas, the Mahabharatas and so on. But nevertheless, he was not satisfied. His dissatisfaction was observed by his spiritual master, and thus Narada advised him to write on the transcendental activities of Lord Sri Krishna. These transcendental activities are described specifically in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. But in order to reach to the very substance, one must proceed gradually by developing knowledge of the different categories. It is natural that a philosophical mind wants to know about the origin of the creation. At night he sees the stars in the sky, and he naturally speculates about their inhabitants. Such inquiries are natural for men because men have a developed consciousness which is higher than that of the animals. The author of Srimad Bhagavatam gave a direct answer to such inquiry. He says that the Lord Sri Krishna is the origin of all creation. He is not only the creator of the universe, but the destroyer as well. The manifested cosmic nature is created at a certain period by the will of the Lord. It is maintained for some time, and then it is annihilated by His will. Therefore, the Supreme Will is behind all cosmic activities. Of course, there are atheists of various categories who do not believe in Creator, but that is due to a poor fund of knowledge. The modern scientist, for example, has created space satellite, and by some arrangement or other, these satellites are thrown into outer space to fly for some time at the control of the scientist who is far away. Similarly, all the universe with innumerable stars and planets are controlled by the intelligence of the personality of Godhead. In Vedic literatures, it is said that the absolute truth, personality of Godhead, is the chief among all living personalities. All living beings, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to the smallest ant, are individual living beings. And above Brahma, there are even other living beings with individual capacities, and the personality of Godhead is also a similar living being. And he is an individual as are the other living beings. But the Supreme Lord or the Supreme Living Being has the greatest intelligence, and he possesses supermost inconceivable energies of all different varieties. If a man's brain can produce a space satellite, one can very easily imagine how brain higher than man can produce similar wonderful things which are far superior. The reasonable person will easily accept this argument, but there are stubborn atheists who would never agree. Srila Vyasadeva, however, at once accepts the supreme intelligence of the Parameshwara. He offers his respectful obeisances onto the supreme intelligence addressed as the Para or the Parameshwara or the supreme personality of Godhead. And that Parameshwara is Sri Krishna, as admitted in Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures delivered by Srila Vyasadeva, and specifically in this Srimad Bhagavatam. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that there is no other Paratattva, Samam Bonam, than himself. Therefore, Srila Vyasadeva at once worshipped the Paratattva, Sri Krishna, whose transcendental activities are described in the 10th canto. Unscrupulous persons go immediately to the 10th canto and especially to the 5 chapters which describe the Lord's rasa dance. This portion of Srimad Bhagavatam is the most confidential part of this great literature. Unless one is thoroughly accomplished in the transcendental knowledge of the Lord, one is sure to misunderstand the Lord's worshipable transcendental pastimes called rasa dance and his love affair with the gopis. This subject matter is highly spiritual, and only liberated persons who have gradually attained to the stage of Paramahamsa can transcendentally relish this rasa dance. Srila Vyasadeva therefore gives the reader the chance to gradually develop spiritual realization before actually relishing the essence of the pastimes of the Lord. Therefore, he purposefully invokes a Gayatri mantra, Dhimahi. This Gayatri mantra is meant for spiritually advanced people. When one is successful in chanting the Gayatri mantra, he can enter into the transcendental position of the Lord. One must therefore acquire Brahminical qualities or be perfectly situated in the qualities of goodness in order to chant the Gayatri mantra successfully, and then attain to the stage of transcendentally realizing the Lord, His name, His fame, His pastime, and so on. Srimad Bhagavatam is the narration of the Swarupa of the Lord, manifested by His internal potency, and this potency is distinguished from the external potency which has manifested the cosmic world, which is within our experience. Srila Vyasadeva makes a clear distinction between the two in this shloka. Srila Vyasadeva says herein that the manifested internal potency is real, whereas the external manifested energy in the form of material existence is only temporary and illusory, like the mirage in the desert. In the desert mirage, there is no actual water. There is only the appearance of water. Real water is somewhere else. The manifested cosmic creation appears as reality, but reality of which this is but a shadow. It is in the spiritual world. Absolute truth is in this spiritual sky, not the material sky. In the material sky, everything is a relative truth. That is to say, one truth depends on something else. This cosmic creation results from the interaction of the three modes of nature, and the temporary manifestations are so created as to present an illusion of reality to the bewildered minds of the conditioned soul, who appear in so many species of life, including the higher demigods like Brahma, Indra, Chandra, and so on. In actuality, there is no reality in the manifested world. There appears to be a reality, however, because of the true reality which exists in the spiritual world, where the personality of Godhead eternally exists with his transcendental paraphernalia. The chief engineer of a complicated construction does not personally take part in the construction, but he knows every nook and corner because everything is done under his direction. He knows everything about the construction, both directly and indirectly. Similarly, the personality of Godhead, who is the supreme engineer of this cosmic creation, knows every nook and corner. Although affairs are being carried out by the demigods, beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, no one is independent in the material creation. The hand of the Lord is seen everywhere. All material elements, as well as the spiritual spark, emanate from him only. And whatever is created in this material world is but the interactions of two energies, the material and the spiritual, which emanates both from the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. A chemist can manufacture water in the chemical laboratory by mixing hydrogen and oxygen. But in reality, the living entity works in the laboratory under the direction of the Supreme Lord. The material with which he works are also supplied by the Lord. The Lord knows everything directly and indirectly, and he is cognizant of all minute details, and he is fully independent. He is compared to a mine of gold, and the cosmic manifestation is so many different forms are compared to objects made from gold, such as gold ring, necklace, earrings, and so on. The gold ring and the gold necklace are qualitatively one with the gold in the mine, but quantitatively the gold in the mine is different. Therefore, the absolute truth is simultaneously one and different. Nothing is absolutely equal with the absolute truth, but at the same time, nothing is independent of the absolute truth. Conditioned souls, beginning from Brahma, who engineers the entire universe down to the insignificant ant, are all created, but none of them are independent of the Supreme Lord. The materialistic wrongly think that there is no creator other than his own self. This is called Maya or illusion. Because of his poor fund of knowledge, the materialist cannot see beyond the purview of his imperfect senses, and thus he thinks that matter automatically takes its own shape without the aid of a superior intelligence. This is refuted in this shloka by Srila Vasudeva. Since the complete whole or the absolute truth is the source of everything, nothing can be independent of the body of the absolute truth. Whatever happens to the body quickly becomes known to the embodied. Similarly, the creator is the creation of the body of the absolute whole. Therefore, the absolute whole knows everything directly and indirectly that happens in the creation. In the Shruti mantra, it is also stated that absolute whole or Brahman is the ultimate source of everything. Everything emanates from him, and everything is maintained by him. And at the end, everything enters into him. That is the law of nature. In the Smriti mantra, the same is confirmed. It is said that the source from which everything emanates at the beginning of Brahma's millennium and the reservoir to which everything ultimately enters is the absolute truth or Brahman. Material scientists take it for granted that the ultimate source of planetary system is the sun, but they are unable to explain the source of the sun. Herein the ultimate source is explained. According to Vedic literatures, Brahma, who may be compared to the sun, is not the ultimate creator. It is stated in this shloka that Brahma was taught Vedic knowledge by the personality of Godhead. One may argue that Brahma, being the original living being, could not be inspired because there was no other living being at the time. Herein it is stated that the Supreme Lord inspired the secondary creator Brahma in order that Brahma would carry out his creative functions. So the supreme intelligence behind all creation is the absolute Godhead Sri Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krsna states that it is He only who superintends the creative energy, Prakriti, which constitutes the totality of matter. Therefore, Sri Vyasadeva does not worship Brahma, but the Supreme Lord who guides Brahma in his creative activities. In this shloka, the particular word abhigna and swarat are significant. These two words distinguish the Supreme Lord from all other living entities. No other living entity is either abhigna or swarat. That is, no one is either fully cognizant or fully independent. Even Brahma has to meditate upon the Supreme Lord in order to create. Then what to speak of great scientists like Einstein? The brains of such a scientist are certainly not the product of any human being. Scientists cannot manufacture such a brain. And what to speak of foolish atheists who defy the authority of the Lord? Even Mayavadi impersonalists who flatter themselves that they can become one with the Lord are neither abhigna or swarat. Such impersonalists undergo severe austerities to acquire knowledge to become one with the Lord. But ultimately they become dependent on some rich disciple who supplies them with money to build monasteries and temples. Atheists like Ravana or Hiranyakashipu had to undergo severe penance before they could flout the authority of the Lord. But ultimately they are rendered helpless and could not save themselves when the Lord appeared before them as cruel death. This is also the case with the modern atheists who also dare to flout the authority of the Lord. Such atheists will be dealt with similarly, for history repeats itself. Whenever man neglects the authority of the Lord, nature and her laws are there to penalize them. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita in the well-known verse Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glane. Whenever there is a decline of dharma and a rise of adharma, O Arjuna, then I incarnate myself. Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 text 7. That Supreme Lord is all perfect is confirmed in all the Shruti mantras. It is said in the Shruti mantras that all perfect Lord threw a glance over matter and thus created all living beings. The living beings are part and parcel of the Lord, and He impregnates the vast material creation with the seeds of spiritual sparks, and thus the creative energies are set in motion to enact so many wonderful creations. An atheist might argue that God is no more expert than a watchmaker. But of course God is greater because He can create machines in duplicate male and female forms. The male and female forms of different types of machinery goes on producing innumerable similar machines without God's further attention. If a man could manufacture such a set of machines that could produce other machines without his attention, then he could approach the intelligence of God. But that is not possible, for each machine has to be handled individually. Therefore, no one can create as well as God. Another name for God is Asamudharva, which means that no one is equal to or greater than Him. Param Satyam, or the Supreme Truth, is He who has no equal or superior. This is confirmed in the Shruti mantras. It is said that before the creation of the material universe, there exists the Lord only, who is master of everyone. That master instructs Brahma in Vedic knowledge. That Lord has to be obeyed in all respects. Anyone who wants to get rid of the material entanglements must surrender unto him. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Unless one surrenders onto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, it is certain that he will be bewildered. When an intelligent man surrenders onto the lotus feet of Krishna and knows completely that Krishna is the cause of all causes, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, then only can such an intelligent man become a Mahatma or great soul. But such a great soul is rarely seen. Only the Mahatma can understand the Supreme Lord is the primeval cause of all creation. He is Parama, or ultimate truth, because all other truths are relative to him. He is omniscient. For him there is no illusion. Some Mayavadi scholars argue that Srimad Bhagavatam was not compiled by Srila Vasudeva, and some of them suggest that this book is a modern creation written by someone named Vevopadeva. In order to refute such meaningless arguments, Srila Sridhar Swami points out that there is a reference to Bhagavatam in many of the oldest Puranas. This first sloka of the Bhagavatam begins with the Gayatri Mantra. There is reference in the Matsya Purana, which is the oldest Purana. In that Purana, it is stated that with reference to the Gayatri Mantra and the Bhagavatam, that there are many narrations of spiritual instruction beginning with the Gayatri Mantra. And there is the history of Vritasura. Anyone who makes a gift of this great work on the full moon day attains to the highest perfection of life by returning to Godhead. There is reference to the Bhagavatam in other Puranas also, where it is clearly stated that this work was finished in 12 cantos, which includes 18,000 shlokas. In the Padma Purana also there is reference to the Bhagavatam in a conversation between Gautama and Maharaj Ambarisha. The king was advised herein to read regularly Srimad Bhagavatam if he desired liberation from material bondage. Under the circumstances, there is no doubt about the authority of Bhagavatam. Within the past 500 years, many erudite scholars and acharyas like Jiva Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Vallabhacharya and many others, distinguished scholars, even after the time of Lord Chaitanya, made elaborate commentaries on the Bhagavatam. And the serious students would do well to accept to go through them to better relish the transcendental message. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur specifically deals with the original and pure sex psychology, Adi Rasa, devoid of all mundane inebrities. The whole material creation is moving under the principle of sex life. In modern civilization, sex life is the focal point of all activities. Wherever one turns his face, he sees sex life predominant. Therefore, sex life is not unreal. It is reality. Its reality is experienced in the spiritual world. The material sex life is but a perverted reflection of the original fact. The original fact is in the absolute truth, and thus the absolute truth cannot be impersonal. It is not possible to be impersonal and contain pure sex life. Consequently, the impersonalist philosophers have given indirect impetus to the abominable mundane sex life because they have overstressed the impersonality of the ultimate truth. Consequently, man, without information of the actual spiritual form of sex, has accepted perverted material sex life as the all in all. there is a distinction between sex life in the diseased material condition and spiritual sex life. This Srimad Bhagavatam will gradually elevate the unbiased reader to the highest perfectional stage of transcendence. It will enable him to transcend the three modes of nature, transcend the three modes of material activities, fruitive actions, speculative philosophy, and worship of functional deities as inculcated in the Vedic verse.